AFC North fans, welcome into another edition of the AFC North Roundtable, powered by BetUS, where the game begins. Receive a 125% sign-up bonus via the link in the description below, up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. Last week, the 4 fellas from the AFC North Roundtable ranked their quarterbacks in order from 1 to 4. Tonight, we focused on the most important position in the sport last week. Tonight, we focus on perhaps the second most important position in the sport, and that is the wide receiver position. But in order for us to dive into it, we got to bring on our panel members, and I'll start off with the Cleveland Browns representative, Chef Zay. Chef, you ready to rank some receivers tonight or what?
Let's get it, man. Let's get it.
Chef's ready to rock. Hopefully he doesn't have to nail the ref behind him. But we'll see what Mark has to say about that for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mark, you ready to rock?
Oh, I'm good to go.
Bobby, you ready to roll?
Locked in. Let's get it.
And Zim from Cincinnati, you ready to rock?
Yes, sir. Ski.
All right. So last week, fellas, as you remember, we ranked the quarterbacks for the 4 teams here in the AFC North. And there was a bit of controversy, as we thought there might be, because we have 2 elite quarterbacks in this division, of course, in Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. And it got a little heated in the comment section at the very least, but that's the beauty of Roundtable Sports. Tonight we'll see if we wind up going down a similar path as we rank the wide receivers in this division from 1 through 4. Now, there is some elite talent at the wide receiver position in this division, but I personally feel like I might know where it's going. I'm interested to see where the fellas have it going. So without further ado, let's dive in to our first ranking of the evening. And we're going to start with Chef Zay. Chef, here's your top 4 wide receivers on the screen from the division. Talk me through how you came to this conclusion.
Well, I think number 1 has to be obvious. We got to put some respect on that Bengals receiving room. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins is probably, top 2, top 3, probably top duo in the league. I know it's tough saying that, but the Browns, I don't know if I'm going to surprise people with that. But I feel like we're pretty deep. I think people are underestimating the fact that we have 3 of the best space creators in terms of route running in the league. Amari Cooper, what's understood, doesn't need to be explained. Jerry Jeudy, I think, Denver didn't get the most out of him, but I think his best attribute is route running. And Elijah Moore is looked at as one of those guys who still has some talent that needs to be tapped into, who can also create space out in that slot position. That's not even talking about the fact that I think Cedric Tillman is set up to prime, maybe escalate even to a higher level this year and maybe take over and be one of these primary guys. As for the Steelers, I think, if Aiyuk ends up there, you can maybe argue them above us, depending on Pickens and if he's not included in that trade. But I just think George Pickens is a better name than Zay Flowers. Although I'm high on Zay Flowers. I do like Zay Flowers. I think the depth is a little bit more there on the Steelers. And the Ravens have always been – they're searching for a receiver room. They haven't quite found it yet, though.
So we see Chef Zay going with the Bengals at number 1. The question is, will Zim pat himself on the back and do the same? I got a feeling he might, but let's take a look at what Zim.
Shocker.
And there it is. How about it? Zim, Bengals at number 1. Talk me through your list.
I shocked myself with this one right here. I was deliberating on this for seriously. The Bengals are the best wide receiving core in the National Football League, let alone in the division. And I just feel like there is a lot of different wide receivers that people try to put over them that are much older. That I just don't agree with. And a lot of times those guys are in situations that I think are advantageous for them. I don't think anybody would take our head coach. And if you watch Bengals games, you'll see how hard that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins had to work for every single thing that they get. The wide receivers like Burton and Yoshi, I think would be number 2, number 3 options on at least half of the league right now. I'm telling you. Yoshi getting those 4 touchdowns in very limited time last year, is like the prequel to what's about to come. Jermaine Burton, I'm telling you, Jamar Chase, from a fantasy football standpoint, they're going to put him in the slot. He's the second like highest rated slot receiver in the National Football League in the last 2 years, but they haven't had the ability to put him in the slot as often as they want. But when he is there, he is very, very dangerous. My second one is I'm gonna go with the Browns. I think that Judy, as far as a separator, like Chef just said, is one of the best separators in all of football. He's had a bad situation, I think, on a lot of those different teams, and so I am really, really high on his route running. He has to put it all together, or like Steve Smith said, he'll just be a jag. Amari Cooper, though, him having the amount of yards that he did, I know a lot of it came in one game. I'm not going to hold him that. I'm not going to hold him to that. But what he's done since he got into the AFC North, I think a lot of people aren't paying attention to that. Some of the other guys that they have, I think, are pretty good too. Like Tillman, I was pretty high on. I like them over the other kid that they had at Tennessee, Hyatt. I thought that he was the better wide receiver out of the prospects last year. The Ravens, I'm going to put at number 3. I think Zay Flowers is a really good wide receiver. I don't look at him as a number 1 wide receiver. I think the offense runs through the tight ends, and then it goes out. Zay Flowers against some of the top corners that are more physical, I think he may have some issues with. Maybe he won't. We'll see. I think the game plan is to put more attention on him probably this year if you're a competitor or someone going up against him. I think Rashard Bateman is a really good wide receiver too that just hasn't put it all together. If Rashard Bateman played for the Bengals, I guarantee you Joe Burrow would have him with 1,000 yards. The opportunity would be there. The target share would be there. He has all the measurables. People don't know if the Bengals didn't get Jamar Chase in the draft that they got and went with Penei Sewell, a guy that they probably would have been looking at was Rashard Bateman. I think that Devontae Walker, although he was very upset that he didn't get drafted by the Bengals. I don't know if y'all saw that quote. But he talked about how they picked Burton over him or whatever. But he's one of the deep threats that I was keeping my eye on in the draft because the Bengals, since they lost Marvin Jones, really haven't had a deep threat. One of the knocks on the Bengals, I thought their wide receiving core is really slow. Like people be like, oh, yeah, they're really slow. Like Jamar Chase was like the speed guy. T. Higgins isn't speed, and now they finally got speed. Steelers, I have it number 4. Like I said, I'm very high on George Pickens, but the rest of the unit, I don't even know if I would take half of those guys, like even on like as a 5th, 6th, 7th option or whatever. Just being honest, I didn't really like Roman Wilson coming out. Maybe he'll prove me wrong, but that's kind of how I have it. Like I said, like everybody else said, if they got Aiyuk, I would move them right up to number 2 if they got Aiyuk. But as of right now, I got them at the bottom. I feel like some of the Calvin Austins is unproven, injured that first year. All these different things. Van Jefferson is borderline. Like, was he in the league last year? I don't even know. That's going to be their number 2 wide receiver. I just don't buy it.
I saw your tweet as well, Zim, on the old internet. You now if Aiyuk goes away, we're going to lean on Van Jefferson. I saw that. I was like, don't respond yet. So yeah,
it's this guy, bro. That dude I told you about, that Steelers dude, that's crazy. He's been telling me like Aiyuk, and our like ongoing joke is like, what are you going to get, a Van Jefferson jersey or whatever? I am not high on Van Jefferson, so especially not as a number 2 wide receiver.
We are 2 for 2 so far with the Bengals taking the top spot from Chef and Zim. Interested to see what Bobby and Mark have to say about it. But before we hear from them, great time to mention that this episode of the AFC North Roundtable is brought to you by BetUS. Fastest payouts in the industry, easy deposit and withdrawal process, 24/7 personalized service, 365 days a year. And with the season coming up, live wagering on all major games. You can't beat it, especially with a 125% sign-up bonus, up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits via the link in the description below. Real quick word from Mike Vick before we hear from Bobby and Mark.
Michael Vick here at BetUS.com. Get it all. Huge bonuses, great odds, a race book, live in-game betting, and a casino. BetUS, my online sports book and casino.
All right, Bobby, I'm interested to see what you have, especially because we just heard Zim say that if Rashad Bateman was on the Bengals, Joe Burrow would have him putting up a quad spot with ease. So I was looking in your direction to see the reaction there. But before we get to that, let's get to your list. Let's see what you have. We're 3 for 3 on the Bengals. Bobby, walk me through it.
Z-Bot, you and I were literally in lockstep there with that Bateman comment. I'm thinking to myself, Zim,
like
are you not aware of his availability or lack thereof in the first 2 years of his career?
I got you.
It was 12 games in his rookie year and then 6 in year 2. Luckily for him, he actually was able to play almost a full season last year. He just wasn't that big of a factor. I do agree with you. The potential is there. He's a silky route runner. He's got a good pair of hands, right? He has that straight line speed. We've seen flashes of this, but there is a disconnect with Lamar. There has been an inconsistency in the availability category, and for that and other reasons, it has been a hard 3 years with Rashad. Shockingly, he actually got an extension this offseason, and he's going to be here for the foreseeable future on a very, very team-friendly deal. So anyway, his fifth-year option was not picked up. He is looked at as a polarizing figure, as you would expect, because of the position and because of the misses that they've had, which is what Zay referenced earlier on. Let's be very clear. There is not a homer hat on right now. The Ravens have missed at the wide receiver position, and they have consistently missed throughout their 27-year history. That doesn't mean they haven't taken their shots. That doesn't mean they haven't had their free agency splashes. Anquan Bolden and Steve Smith Sr. are two of the greatest receivers to ever suit up for them, and they weren't homegrown Ravens, though. That's the problem. They haven't found homegrown Ravens. Can Zay be one of the first? I think so. It's a small sample size. I think he's capable of being a number one. Let me be clear here. For Baltimore. On any other team, he's not. But for the Ravens and the way they play through their tight ends, as Zim mentioned, that makes him capable of being a number one in terms of what Baltimore's trying to do. So, look, there's no sense in adding anything else that's been said about the top of the list. Cincinnati's number one.
You didn't want to expand on the Bengals?
You want to hear me talk up your team.
Yeah, this is right up Zim's alley. Out of all the things we could talk about in regard to the Bengals, it's
probably the only category I'm going to get. You know what I'm saying?
He wants me to gush over his team so he can clip me and then go use it on his show. That's what he wants to do, Zim.
No.
Zim, I know you like a book at this point, okay? So Cincy, let's give you your respect. Cincy deserves to be in the top spot. We know why. After that, the fact that Cleveland has a trio, right, of Amari, Jerry, even though they overpaid for a guy who has not accomplished a lot in this league in terms of what his potential could be, that's why they paid it. I get it. They went and got their guy. But the fact that they have Amari, Jerry, and Elijah, to me, the Ravens and Steelers just can't compete with that. The reason why I gave the Ravens an edge over the Steelers here between the third and fourth spot is because of what the Ravens have in terms of candidates and the potential there outside of Zay. If we're looking at Zay and George as counterparts or as respective number ones for what their two schemes asks of them, then I think outside of those two, the Ravens have more potential candidates to contribute, whether it be a breakout year for Rashad or a nice solid veteran caliber year from Nelson Aguilar, or perhaps, Devontae Walker gets an opportunity to show what he's about. Outside of that, there's a lot of question marks, but I will give the Ravens just a slight edge because of what they have outside of Zay.
What I love the most about the AFC North Roundtable is even though throughout the year you will notice many a disagreement, look at this. Look at the beauty. Look at the symmetry between Bobby and Zim. Back-to-back lists, same from top to bottom. And in all three so far, we have the Bengals coming in at number one. Will Mark make it a clean sweep? Drum roll, please. And he does. All four representatives of the AFC North Roundtable have the Bengals at the top spot. Mark, let's hear how you came to the conclusion. And before I let you go, I'm just noticing after you're done with the Bengals, dying to hear how you came to the conclusion that the Steelers are at 2, the highest thus far we've seen them on any list.
I had to put the Bengals number one because of Chase and your other mate Higgins. Like, I don't know any other receiver, the new bloke Burton, the rookie, but I had to. They're just by far, I think, one of the best receiver groups, in the division. Now, there's a reason. There's a reason, and I know that Zim got the quad. He got all four, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, all in a row. That's fine. Okay, Bengals can win something, but it's only a small shot. But seriously,
the tone was great, by the way, Mark. It was very subtle.
I'm warming up to this thing.
I heard it loud and clear, though.
Not really a mean person. I'm just warming up in the AFC.
Why Bobby wears the headset so he can make sure to get the picture and stuff like that.
Right. So, okay, the reason why I went number 2 is I think the Steelers in a really different position. They traded away Deontay Johnson, right? And they had George Pickens. George Pickens is like what Bobby said. He's for Zay Flowers. George Pickens is going to be our number 1. Now he's a really good receiver. But then when it comes back from that, and I know Zim was doing some tweets out there in terms of Van Jefferson, that's your next guy. And it really is. He is really our next guy, Van Jefferson. So I think he's going to be number 2. And we need some other blokes to step up, like the Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin. I guess I'm putting a lot of hope into this season. And yes, I'm probably wearing my fan hat today for sure. But at the same time, I think with the Browns, so I feel like the Steelers with George Pickens, that has to be. Look, I think 2 and 3 probably could swap, to be honest. Like George Pickens to me is a fantastic receiver. He's gonna, if he goes, knock on wood, if he goes down, we're in big trouble. Like we don't have any number 1 receiver like that. So I think we're gonna lean more towards on the tight ends as well this season in the running game. And we're not gonna, go back to our third. If we talk about pass catchers and not receivers, I think the Steelers could be one, and Ravens could be up there too. Do you know what I mean? With the different links to that.
With the
tight ends and whatnot. So going towards the Browns. Who do you guys got? You got I really got to double check. I don't even know.
Let me refresh your memory here, Mark. So we go back to what Zay had. Here's what Zay had. He had the Steelers at 3 and the Ravens at last in 4th. And then we had the same exact list from Zim and from Bobby: Bengals, Browns, Ravens, Steelers. And you have the Ravens in dead last. Now, it's not a crazy take because, Chef had him in last. Bobby himself and Zim both had him in 3. So you having him at the bottom end here, it isn't the craziest take of the night. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I
it's
know
definitely
why.
crazy that he has him at 2, though. Like, can we be honest there? That is wild.
What I love about it, fellas, is that graphic for Mark should say Bengals, Pickens, Browns, Ravens. That's what it should
be. Mark,
guys. I know why you
get
guys
him, Bobby. Get him.
Mark,
I don't
want to smoke with George Pickens. I'm just like, so
Mark,
I'm not.
You've been a very realistic, even keel, balanced, level-headed guy since I've known you for the last 8 days. And wow, this is making me second guess a number of those traits.
I think I noticed Mark was cooked when he said, well, if we could factor in the tight ends, then it might be a different story. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, all right.
I know that you fellas see it from your perspective in the AFC North, right? And then we have got no one but after Pickens. Like I totally get that, but I just couldn't. I just couldn't do it. I don't know. I just had to put Pickens up there, and I guess maybe if I put him at 3, then I'm dragging Pickens down. But I understand the idea of like where we're 4.
Let me give you some backup here, Mark, because as we're recording this, the jury's still out on Brandon Aiyuk. Okay, it's down to 2 teams, the Niners and the Steelers. And right now, Chef has the Steelers at 3, and both Bobby and Zim have the Steelers at 4. You have them at 2, but I'll ask the other fellas, and I think someone mentioned it earlier, but I want a collective answer. If Brandon Aiyuk, by the time we join you next, if he is a Steeler, does he go up on all your guys' list?
Yes.
Yes.
He goes to number 2. The Steelers are number 2.
Agreed.
If they get
he would jump to 2.
But Can I ask y'all this, though? Aiyuk coming out there today in the 49ers uniform. Had he done that before?
I can't keep track. Like Mark said earlier, when we last joined and we talked about this, and Mark basically said that you just can't wait for it to end. I think we're all on the same boat. I don't think anybody really knows. But I think, to your point, Zim, I think him walking out on the field fully geared up today was the first we've seen of that. I think.
Okay. Yeah, I assumed it was over at that point.
Yeah,
Bobby makes a good point, right? It was actual logoed gear, correct, Bobby?
Right. It was a team cutoff, 49ers cutoff. Grant Cohn, who's also on our network, tweeted that out. And that to me says, like, okay, I'm still not participating. There's still clearly a disagreement, but I'm in the building. I'm showing up, and we're clearly having conversations. Like John Lynch, I'm pretty sure acknowledged his existence on the sideline. You better believe this thing's going to get done. I've kind of been of the belief the entire time, even though we're talking about projecting him being in the division, just don't see them letting him walk. And I know there's a bunch of different leverage pieces back and forth, but you can't let a player of his caliber go, especially when you were so close getting to where you wanted to go last year. And they've been so close, and they've competed for Super Bowls, and they're not going to let him walk. That's my feeling.
Well, and the interesting point about that is the health of Deebo Samuel is always a concern. George Kittle's not getting any younger. Right now, you don't have to pay Brock Purdy, so you might as well supplement that amount of money being allocated, throughout the league to the quarterback position that the Niners don't have to worry about. You might as well make a move on it because, like you said, Bobby, you're only in this window for so long, and the Niners, their window is as open as anybody's.
They got to pay him next year, though.
That's the curiosity that constantly kills me with the quarterback position is that's the conundrum that they'll be faced with, similar to what the Dolphins were faced with, and other teams that aren't entirely sure. It's a great point, Sam. It makes you wonder: do the Niners right now want to capitalize as close as they are, or are they willing to do what Bobby just said? Let a guy like this walk and maybe take that step down where you lose this year, then you have to pay Purdy, and the whole thing's up in smoke.
I feel like the whole thing is a conversation piece from their front office saying that we know that we need to keep some money to the side. And I know you want, I'm just throwing out a hypothetical. I know you want 28, Brandon, but if we do 28, we might be on thin ice if this market kind of goes up a little bit next year and we got to play Purdy. I feel like that's what this whole thing is about, because if it's just a couple million or something here or there, like you just get it done to me and you just move on with it. And I really feel like they're being like, no, like I can't give you that extra buck because I got Purdy around the corner. And to me, when I look at their offense, they don't have to have a Brandon Aiyuk. The problem that I think they ran into is that they should have took the first round pick that was offered to them before. And then the second problem is the guys that they drafted, like Ricky Pearsall and stuff like that, aren't guys that could replace Aiyuk. So they're in a tough spot because now you're I mean, like Pearsall's probably doing the same route tree as Deebo Samuel or whatever. Like they don't have a guy. Well, they did get the kid Cowan, but I just don't feel like they feel strong enough about those pieces. And that's why the conversation is what it is. It's like, we'll let Aiyuk walk, but we don't really have a legit replacement in place. And then you got the Steelers that are saying, sorry, Mark, I think that their front office is sitting there saying, I don't believe in none of these dudes right here, and we need a Brandon Aiyuk. But historically, let's be honest, the Steelers don't pay wide receivers top money. When they had to choose between Ben and Antonio Brown, they chose Ben. When you go back, when Deontay Johnson took a pretty friendly deal the year prior, like that was like $18 million or something like that. Like they don't pay big time money to that position group, but in that, to me, sets them up for another problem. Because if you did get Aiyuk, then George Pickens, as Bob said on the last one, is like gonna be like, I'm the number one. What are y'all talking? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. That is a mess.
Welcome to the NFL where you trade one problem for another one on a yearly basis.
It feels like a leverage botch to me, if you really want to think about it. I mean, the Steelers are sitting there like, look, we're not going to budge. We know Aiyuk wants to be here, and the compensation isn't there in the San Francisco 49ers room, which is why they had that candid conversation with Brandon Aiyuk. Hey, come out here, throw this half cut on, make good for the camera. They're trying to gain some of this leverage back. The leverage is botched.
Well, maybe the next time we join you folks who have tuned into this episode tonight, we will have a different hierarchy than we showed you this evening. But here is your last look at it. We'll go back in order from where we started. Chef Zay with the Bengals on top, Browns, Steelers, Ravens in that order. We have Zim, Bengals, Browns, Ravens, Steelers. And it looks like Zim.
Can you get to the Bobby one just so I can just get that on my photo records? I just need to get this and document this.
And now Zim's making sure that he gets documented. The Ravens having the Bengals at number one. There's Bobby's Bengals, Browns, Ravens, Steelers. And then Mark, maybe the most controversial, but I think the most fun list of the evening.
Maybe.
Bengals, Steelers, Browns, Ravens. Zim, it was a good night for you tonight, my friend. You had the number one spot on all four lists. How does it feel knowing going into the year, no matter what happens, at least you know, you can rest assured each night you hit the pillow, all these fellas know what I'm walking out with at the wide receiver position?
The old me would have been relishing in it, but I've learned in the last couple of years you need some other positions to be really good as well. So it is really good to know that we have really good wide receivers. But as we get to some of these other position groups, I think we're going to start to peel some of the Band-Aid off or whatever. I don't know what you're saying.
I think you might as well just enjoy it this year because Jamar Chase he need another contract. T. Higgins, he ain't signing another franchise. You have the best right now, but come next year, can be a different story.
You know what's so crazy? Someone just sent me a picture of Jamar Chase getting off the plane in Bengals gear. So don't worry about that. He's got 2 more years left on his deal. So we're good to go on that. Thank you for your concern, though, Shaq.
Just saying. T. Higgins ain't gonna be there next year. Maybe in a different round.
If somebody's got a first-round pick, we'll do a tag and trade. How you guys like that?
Once again,
so we're going to come out like a fat rat no matter what. You gotta love it.
Enjoy today because tomorrow is not promised in the NFL. That is the moral to the story. And the moral of the story tonight is that the Bengals are crowned the champ of the wide receiver room within this division. Thank you so much tonight for tuning in. On your way out, make sure to hit the like button and make sure to hit the subscribe button as we will be bringing you these episodes each and every week throughout the season. For Chef Zay, for a flexing Zim, for Mark, for Bobby Baltimore, I've been your host, Z-Bot, as well. On your way out, I have to mention, if you think that the Bengals have a top-tier wide receiver on their roster, which everyone in here does, might not be a bad idea to head over to BetUS, link in the description below. 125% sign-up bonus, up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. Potentially an offensive player of the year lurking in there with Joe Burrow back throwing him the ball. Who knows? Once again, thanks everybody for tuning in. Another episode of the AFC North Roundtable in the books. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.